Currently, there are many websites and apps where you can plan, for example, a trip, but fundamentally, there are also some where you can choose your accommodation, something important, and where you have to take several aspects into account, for example, the location, the amenities, the price, above all things. But there is something that the vast majority of us don't pay attention to, and that's paranormal issues, which maybe, on some occasion, could possibly ruin our vacation. Today you're going to hear about the case of a family who, after renting through a very well-known website, practically had to escape from a house because of paranormal activity. Of course, I don't want to forget to thank all the members who joined in these last few days. Also to all the people who support the channel by leaving likes, sharing, and most importantly, subscribing, so the channel can keep growing every day. Friends, now we're really starting this new paranormal episode. Enjoy it!
I am Juan Cruz. I'm from Ramallo, and this happened about 25 kilometers from Villa Elisa. In 2022, my wife and I, whenever we can, we go out, we travel, whenever our budget and time allow it, especially because we both work and, well, vacations are limited.
We wanted to visit the Villa Elisa hot springs, a large complex many people likely know. Located in Entre Rios on Route 130, about 60 kilometers from Concepción del Uruguay, just for reference, and 40 kilometers from Colón. I say this to help anyone listening to this story to know where all of this happened to us. That's how it finally happened that we managed to coordinate with our jobs and have a long weekend for ourselves. And as a family, we looked for a place to stay. We did it, like so many other times, through the Airbnb website. Mainly because we can make our choice based on our budget, and there are always really good options. We had several houses and apartments in mind, but in the end, we chose one that convinced us in every way. And I admit that it caught our attention at first because it was a big house, huge really, with many amenities, but at a surprisingly low price. We attributed it to the fact that it was like that because it was a new listing looking for positive reviews, and also because it was a bit far away. It was about 3 kilometers from Route 14 and about the same distance from Route 130. But since we had our own car, this wasn't a problem and we booked it. But of course, we never imagined that such incredible things would happen to us within its walls. The thing is, we left home heading to our own mini vacation that weekend. Once we were already on Route 14, we took a dirt road, and from there we had about the 3 kilometers ahead that I mentioned to you at the beginning. We finally arrived at this house. It was exactly like what we had seen in the pictures. The owner, the day before the trip, told us through WhatsApp that we would find the key hidden behind one of the flower pots at the entrance. I looked for it, and just as we arranged, it was there, and that afternoon we entered this house for the first time. Would we escape from there before the vacation days were over? But before we start, I'd like to be clear about something very specific. We didn't believe in the paranormal. Maybe my wife did a bit, but I want to speak for myself. I'm someone who has always relied on logic and reason. I'm an engineer, and I guess my profession, in a way, forces me to analyze everything from a more analytical, more logical point of view. And I try to find an explanation for absolutely everything. Therefore, I've always found paranormal topics to be not very believable. I hope you get my point. And the truth is that since that time, and I could say it was forced, logic took a back seat. And my mind became open to believing a little more than I was used to. Because, as some say, you don't believe it until it happens to you. Once we were inside, we settled in. At first, we didn't see or feel anything at all. Yes, I have to mention that both the house and all the furniture, even the dishes, were very old. You could tell by every detail, but even so, it was very well taken care of. A few hours later, we went to Colón to do some shopping, mostly drinks, food, and cleaning supplies, and then we went back home. When we returned, something strange happened that no one noticed then. We found a very old cat that was walking along the side of the entrance. We had no idea if she belonged to the house or not. We assumed she did because we were in the middle of nowhere. But there was something strange because she wouldn't come near. She kept her distance at all times and even hid. Several times we saw her go in and out of the house. My wife started affectionately calling her the granny because of how old she was, and none of us, not even my kids, managed to touch her. She was very distrustful, which is common in some cats, so it didn't seem strange to us, and we tried not to bother her and just let her do as she pleased. And I'd like to tell you the first thing that happened to me. It was in the kitchen. It didn't catch my attention, but later, putting the pieces together, I realized that everything was somehow connected. I went into the kitchen to look for a bottle opener that I had seen and left on the counter about 10 minutes earlier, more or less. And when I went, it wasn't there. No one had gone in during that time, so it was strange. I checked the cutlery drawer, but it wasn't there either. It had literally disappeared. I thought maybe it had fallen and I didn't hear it, but it wasn't under the furniture or the table either. I'm going to ask my wife if she had taken it, and she hadn't touched it, so I go back to the kitchen. And just like it happens in the movies, the bottle opener was sitting on the counter. At the time I didn't think much of it, I just assumed I was tired and hadn't noticed it. The thing is, that same night the exact same thing happened with the television remote, but this time my wife was a witness too. We had it on a small table by the couch, and suddenly it was gone. But a few minutes later, it magically returned to its place. That night we had dinner and went to bed with a big question: what was going on? And many of you might be wondering, what happened during the whole night? And I want to tell you, yes. We heard several noises, although I think they were normal because we're talking about a very old house. The wood, the iron, and the metal sheets react to temperature changes, so at no point did I take these noises as something paranormal. So the night went by very peacefully.
Well, and the next day I get up and the first thing I do is go brush my teeth. The washroom was in the hallway with a sink. Behind you was an unused room since we all slept together on mattresses in one room. Because the kids slept in the bed with us, since it was a house they didn't know and they were little, you know. And then I saw like a shadow standing there looking at me. I turned around and there was nothing. I thought, I'm going crazy. I'm still half asleep. I always say my brain hasn't woken up yet. And that was it. It just stayed there.
We had breakfast, and meanwhile I kept thinking about that shadow I had seen. Among the few details I saw, it had a hat and was very tall. But I didn't tell my wife, I don't know why. I tried to keep the whole family calm. So we went to Esterma and enjoyed a really beautiful day. Between one thing and another, we came back after 10 at night. We had already had dinner, so my kids went straight to bed, then my wife, and I was the last one. But before going to bed, something really amazing happened to me. I was in the kitchen, I had some tea, then I went to the bathroom, and it was when I came out that something happened. When I opened the door, a marker flies right past my face. It was as if someone had thrown it from the dining room down the hallway toward the bedrooms. The first thing I thought was that my wife or my 4-year-old daughter had thrown this marker, but I found that no one was up. My wife was already asleep, just like my 2 children. The house was locked up and there was absolutely no one in the dining room.
I stood frozen, a chill running up my spine until I couldn't move. I couldn't move, not due to anything supernatural, but because of fear, so I began looking around and thinking rationally.
At that moment, no matter how many explanations I tried to find, I couldn't do it. How could it be possible that this object flew completely, about 6 meters down this hallway, right in front of my eyes, and without anyone having thrown it? This was definitely something that impressed me a lot, because even though I wasn't seeing a ghost in front of me, I was witnessing a manifestation that went beyond what I understood as possible. That night, I don't know if it was some kind of manifestation or connection with whatever inhabited this house, but I had an extremely vivid dream. In the dream, I saw the same shadowy man with a hat in the dining room, and strikingly, he was with the cat that lived in the house, as if they knew each other. Strangest and most terrifying of all, I woke up and I see in front of me, standing just 5 feet away, this same man with the same clothes and his unmistakable hat. What I did was scream and turn on the light, but at that very moment he disappeared right before my eyes. My wife and my children woke up scared because they didn't understand what had happened, and I simply decided to tell them that I had a nightmare and nothing more than that.
What I do remember this time is that the man was wearing some kind of denim overalls. Those one-piece outfits people wore before remind me of what farmers wore. That's what he had on. And I said, I saw this. I mean, I didn't dream it. The guy was standing there. Another thing was the cat would stare at one spot for a long time, and my wife would joke about it. She says, there must be some goblin. She must see something. And the cat would always stare at a fixed spot. And if she wasn't staring at me, which was already uncomfortable, no, I didn't like it at all.
We returned from the hot springs, and for some reason I wanted to check a cabinet filled with dishes and many old pretty cups and glasses. Until that moment we had never opened it. I started to carefully look through the ornaments that were there, the old cups so well preserved. I love these kinds of things, until I found a little box with papers and also some photos. And I have to admit that never in my whole life have I felt as shocked as I did at that moment. I start going through the papers and photos, and I find one with a man I had already met, but in a different way. He was exactly the one I had dreamed about, and the dark shadow I saw so many times matched him perfectly, along with that distinctive hat. The photo was from 1979. He was likely around 70 years old. This man was dressed exactly as I had seen him, with those overalls and the hat, but the most impressive thing was that there was someone else by his side. It was none other than Grandma. That little cat we used to see walking around the house inside and outside, going from here to there, and we never managed to touch her, nor to give her anything to eat.
No, I didn't stay because, my wife saw the cat, they talked to the cat, the kids talked to the cat, we all saw the cat, even though I was the only one who saw that person. The cat, we called her the grandma, and she was already old. And I see her in a photo from 1979 with this person, and I never forget what the photo said. 1979. Berta. I don't know if Berta was the name of the cat, if Berta referred to the man, but it was the silhouette I had seen at that moment. I can't explain the chills I felt, and obviously I wanted to leave. So, to sum it up a bit and not make it too long, I pretended to get a work call. At that time, I was working at a company with continuous production, so I pretended to get a work call. I told my wife that something had happened at the factory and that we had to go back. Can you imagine how scared I was? Of course, I stayed silent. And on the way back, when luckily we got everything out and left a day before we were supposed to, before the planned date, I told my wife during the trip. And it wasn't until I almost started crying that she realized what I was saying was true. Unfortunately, no. At that moment, from the shock and my inability to act, I just froze. I didn't take a picture of that shape because it was, let's say, the proof that the cat was obviously something that didn't belong to this world. So up to this day, I haven't seen the house listed on this app anymore. I look for it from time to time. I look to see if it's there to check the comments. And I haven't seen it anymore. And I didn't even leave a comment or a review at that time. And like I said, I keep checking every now and then to see if someone is there. Another person went and experienced what I did in that house. Honestly, I wouldn't wish it on anyone.